Welcome to the Working Women's Channel. My name is Clara Capano, and we're going to share the real secrets to success. Come on in. Sylvia, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today and share your story. We've known each other for many years now, and you, I have to say, are probably one of the strongest women that I know. And I was so excited that you were willing to come in and share your story with me and with our viewers.
Well, thank you, Clara. I appreciate it. And I would say that likewise for you too. You're one of my favorite people, and it's been amazing to watch you over the years and where you're at now. So thank you for having me.
So why don't we start off, if you don't mind, just telling our viewers a little bit about you.
Well, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, I would say. My husband and I own a home inspection company, and so we're always doing that. And I also help agents, with their business marketing and building relationships, all tied to Ninja and different things that we do. And more than that, though, is my heart work. And so that's what I'm really focused on at this time in my life, which is the book that I wrote, My Agreements with Me.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about that in our time today, and we can share that. One of the things I would love to talk about today, we really want to share stories of inspiration, motivation, and we all know that the road to success isn't always easy. So can you think about a time as you were growing in your personal life, in your business, where maybe a challenge came up and how you had to overcome that challenge?
Oh man, there are so many things that we can view as challenges and things that come up in our life, but specifically one, when we were just deciding to create our business and not knowing whether or not we'd be able to sustain ourselves and creating our own business and being entrepreneurs. And I think just deciding to have a plan and work together was huge for us. And knowing that we could definitely do it when we had a plan and we executed and used each other's strengths in order to do that.
Yeah, and you're talking about your inspection company with your husband, Steve.
I am.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that, because that's a unique situation. And, working with your significant other, living with your significant other, how do you keep it going? And because I'm sure there's times where the conversations are not always rosy. So how do you make it all work?
For sure. I'm a controller. He's an analyst. So that can be interesting all on its own. So I think that for me, what's been really helpful is just understanding that his strengths are different than mine. And so when I allow him to be himself and live within what he knows that he's good at, and me doing the same thing, I just feel like we make a better partnership when I'm, letting him be him and not attempting to control what he's doing, and he's not analyzing what I'm doing. And he does his role and I do my role, and we work well together doing it that way.
So being able to sort of kind of lay the groundwork early on of this is my lane, this is your lane, and respecting each other enough to stay in the lanes and use your strengths to have it grow.
Definitely. And I feel like that's important. I think when we try to microanalyze everything that's going on with our partner, that in itself can create challenges that don't need to be there when we just let them do what they're good at. And I think also that that's not just about business, that's about life as well.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that has always really just resonated with me when I think about you is you are very strong. And we talk a lot about, personal boundaries, and that's hard for women. And women in business really have a hard time setting those boundaries, saying no. But that's a really big strong suit for yours, is you don't let people walk all over you. Where do you think that came from, and how did that grow in you?
I don't know that I know exactly where it came from, but there was always an idea of integrity for me. Like, integrity is a really strong personal value of mine. And I think that knowing that about ourselves and knowing who we are as a person allows us to stay in our lane and not do the things that we don't want to do or allow people to control or deceive or anything like that. I think just knowing who we are and what we want to create helps with that.
And do you think knowing that allows you to communicate so that when you have to say no to someone or push back, because it never comes across as a negative, people hear you and they respect it. So do you feel like it's kind of when you say no or when you set your boundaries, it's just in that clarity of how you sort of set the expectations?
I think that's exactly it. I think when we have a vision for what we want to do, when we have a strength in knowing who we are, it's not even a matter of saying no and feeling bad about it. In fact, that's one of the things I talk about a lot in the book that I have is knowing who you are and where you stand, because if it's not in alignment with your vision and your values, it's really easy then to make a decision about what someone's asking you to do. And there's nothing to be impolite about. I mean, because when you know where you stand with all of those things, it's really easy to say, you know, I appreciate the offer to do this or that or whatever it is. And it's not going to work out for me because of that, because of knowing where I stand and what I want to create.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. And I just think, you know, when we get that clarity, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It doesn't have to be mean saying no. It's, again, holding that integrity for us. It's not that it's good. It's not that it's bad. It's just, it's not going to work right now.
Right.
And being able to be okay about that.
Yeah.
So
to humbly decline, you know, appreciating the offer and knowing where you stand with your vision. And I think that that's the most important thing, is just the clarity about who you are and what you want to create. That definitely gives everything else purpose and direction, because you know if it's not in alignment with that, there's not a need for it.
Right. Definitely. So now I know that your children are older, but when your children were younger, because I know you have a blended family, when they were younger, you know, we always have to do these trade-offs. You know, sometimes we have to let go of something over here to do something for the bigger picture over here. When you're looking back and when your kids were younger, what were some of the trade-offs that you feel you needed to make?
Trade-offs were definitely with time and missing out on some things. There were maybe some parties I didn't go to, or things that I would say I'm not able to do that because the education that I wanted to gain, or the classes that I was taking that were really important for me. I needed to say no to that in order to stay on the road that I was on. So that was definitely something. Yeah.
So you talk a lot about clarity. And again, you are so clear on your vision for your life and what you want to do. And I know that you've done a lot of work to help you get that clarity. And in doing that, you've been able to help so many other people. And you've written a beautiful new book. Why don't you tell us about the book and how that came about and what your hope is with that?
My Agreements with Me is the name of the book. And I appreciate you even bringing it up, because, you know, that book was the result of the hardships that I had in life, you know, having grown up with domestic violence, my mom having us raised in motel after motel. That really creates a mindset of victimhood and disparity and, you know, not really knowing how to control your life in such a way that you're owning your life. And so the book was actually born out of wanting to leave a message for people of, you know, your past doesn't precede you. Like, you're the creator of your own life. And when you put your vision together with work and clarity, you're going to be able to create results in your life that you didn't even know you were capable of doing.
Yeah. And I just love the title, you know, My Agreements with Me. And I think that really goes, you know, in great connection with what you were just talking about, with your own personal integrity and standing true. You know, how did you come up with that title?
You know, I wrote a piece called My Agreements with Me, because there's actually some agreements that we make with ourselves. And I think that those agreements that we make with ourselves are the most important agreements. And so it was in thinking about what's important to me, what am I willing to stand for, when I came up with that name.
And I think along the way to get to those agreements, oftentimes it's because we've broken agreements with ourselves. In looking back, what are some of the agreements maybe you broke with yourself that you've learned to make, I guess, amends with and sort of set as no longer going backwards?
It's actually a very profound question. And I think when we dive underneath into the depth of that question, what were some of the things that I had broken agreements with myself? It's such an important question, because mine would be around integrity. There were things that I had done in my life that were out of integrity. And for me to be honest with myself, I needed to take a look at that stuff. Like, where did that come from? Why did I do the things I do? What was I wanting to achieve in my life? And so I just feel like staying in integrity in your life, it's all of the things that we have challenges with when we're out of integrity and we're not transparent and we have conflicting things going on inside, which what I would call the inner contradictions.
Yes. And I think the beauty of it is not not in focusing on the fact that we broke an agreement with ourselves, but acknowledging that to go forward and to say, and to be kind. That was something I think I've also learned from you is we can mess up, but our past doesn't have to be a place of residence. It should just be a place of reference for us.
Absolutely. And drawing the line in the sand. And that's another thing that I think is really important is when we do come to that clarity within ourselves about where we've maybe been out of integrity or we've done something that we don't want to repeat or hurt someone and don't want to repeat, or we're asking for forgiveness or whatever it might be, that there's a line in the sand that we draw, that we say, in order for me not to repeat this in my life, I really do need to stay in integrity with myself and not go back, not live there and not go back and move forward. And
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So now, being that you were younger when you were a mom, and again, you have your wonderful family, what would you say are some of the best things that you have found in being a working mom?
Well, I love the idea of entrepreneurship, and that's, it's been great to be able to do that. And it's one of the things that I coach to my kids as well, is you get to be in charge of your future. And that's the message that I always want to leave with them. You get to create what you want to create with that.
Yeah. Definitely. And you kind of became an entrepreneur a little later in life, though.
I did. I worked for other people for about 28 years. And the last 14 were actually where you and I spent a lot of time together. Yeah. And so leaving that was actually an interesting thing, to be able to leave that and create our own business, for sure.
Yeah. What was sort of the spark for you? Because I'm sure that there was some fear around that.
There was. There was actually an incident that happened. Steve had actually almost died in an accident. Oh. And it was like, wow, do I want to keep doing that kind of work for other people, or do I want to create my own work? And so that was kind of the catalyst for us to be able to build our own business.
Yeah, sometimes in those moments of trauma is when we get the light bulb that's
it's like,
sometimes tapping us on the shoulder.
Yeah, for sure.
So, those are some of the great sides of being a working mom. Maybe what are some of the challenges that you can see in being a working mom?
Getting too caught up in work and making that the most important thing. And looking back, if I had to say that there was a moment that if I could go back and do something different, I never stopped. I gave so much loyalty to my work that I didn't stop and smell the roses, if you will, or pay attention to some of the things that were going on. I remember a story of one of the people that I worked for. He was telling me a story about looking back. I was there for my son's kindergarten class, and I stayed there, and I was busy running a business and never stopped to take that time. So I would definitely, if I was giving feedback or wisdom or guidance to someone else in that position, I would say just be careful about how much time you give to that.
Yeah. So when you're looking at your days, because again, you have your kids, even though they're more grown and moving out of the house, you have grandbaby, one or two, I can't remember.
One on the way.
One on the way.
Yep, one here, one on the way.
So you have that, you have, your husband, you have your businesses, because you also work with send out cards and do your writing with Serenity's Ways.
Yep.
How do you manage that? What are some of the secrets to structuring your day, the secrets to helping you stay successful and manage all of these?
Well, actually, a lot of it is learned from you and some of the stuff that you teach. There are certain things that I've learned in terms of like creating that bubble time, that time that's specifically for certain things. And I feel like that has been instrumental. Knowing things like that has been instrumental in being able to manage some of the time as it relates to all of those different things, because all of those things have to get done. And so that's another thing about clarity too, as well, is that when we have that clarity about what we need to do and get done, we say, no, this time is for this specifically, and we don't allow other things to come in and kind of create upheaval in that plan. Yeah,
definitely. So going back to what you were talking about with, making sure that we stop and smell the roses. One thing that I think we as working women don't do enough of is self-care. So what do you do to take care of you?
Well, I have a certain time that's built out for me in the morning. So between 4 and 7 a.m., that would be my time. And I know there are people who are like, are you kidding me? You really get up that early, and I do, because at that time for meditation and self-reflection and being still is at this point in my life one of the most important things. I mean, I don't know that I would be able to stay grounded and have the wherewithal to deal with some of the stuff that comes up if I didn't have that groundedness.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm a 5 a.m. girl, and my mornings are my secret weapon, and I love my mornings. And I agree, a lot of people are like, I could not possibly do that. But when I started doing it, I saw the positive change that it brought to me. And it's same thing, it gives me that grounding foundation.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how much that groundedness affects the rest of your day. I feel like when we make the time for that, when we are deeply grounded in knowing who we are and our spiritual connection, and that's, again, for me at this time in my life, that's such a huge important thing. And I'm not swayed off track by other things when I'm totally grounded in knowing that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So now when the rough days come, because we know rough days still come, where do you go for help to support you, to help you face the challenges and pull yourself out of the challenges? You
know, my husband is the person I go to the most. He's just my biggest cheerleader. And so he, beyond anyone, he sees the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So when it does get challenging sometimes, he's who I can vent to and know that it's a safe space to vent to.
I love it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit also about your contribution work, because I know in alignment with your book, you give back a lot to, certain organizations. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that, because I think contribution is a lot of how you take care of yourself as well, because that's a big part of who you are. Yeah,
thank you. And I agree. And I think contribution for me at the end of the day is, what's it all for? If we don't teach and give back and attempt to make a difference, what was all that for anyway? And so for me, where I like to give back is coincidentally or not coincidentally, where a lot of the pain and trauma was growing up around domestic violence. What I get deeply is, there's a couple things I would say: hurt people. People don't know what they don't know. So there are some people who would never have an experience or an example that taught them things about integrity or about having a vision or about practicing pausing, and there's just so many things that they have no idea because they live in a place of survival. And so the book is about giving back. The book is about growth in every single way: body, mind, soul, spirit. And I think it gives people an opportunity who may not have thousands and thousands of dollars to do a lot of personal development work to be able to glean some of that knowledge and experience. Yeah, and that was another big reason I wanted you here to talk about this, is because we're talking about working women and we're talking about the real stories behind success. And there are a lot of obstacles out there for many people who, if given the chance, would be able to thrive, but they just don't know where to go. And I think the work that you do really shows them that there are opportunities out there and may give them some of the direction that they need to just open the door a little bit and take the leap. Well, yeah, I agree. And I think that too, what's important sometimes to recognize is where people are at or what their stories are. They don't sometimes cannot separate that's my story and not who I am. And again, I just going back to sometimes people don't have the means to put thousands of dollars into personal development. I had a conversation with someone recently who said, I wouldn't work with anyone who didn't have money and to put skin in the game. And my thought that came up for me is that there's a lot of people that, because they're in survival, because they grew up in those types of mentalities, there's no skin to put in the game. They're living in survival. Just attempting to pay the bills and have a roof over their head or enough money to get to the next meal is what their whole life is concentrated on. And so if you don't have an understanding of that, if you don't have a heart to want to see past what, people's challenges are, what they might be doing in their life to try to just live through that, you'll never have an understanding. Yeah, and that was something that I really wanted to do. I mean, I was fortunate enough that I did have two parents who were able to allow me opportunities, and I had a wonderful family and a wonderful support system, but there were still challenges, and some of the business that I have now were because people believed in me, and they gave me an opportunity when nobody else would, and believed in me. And that was something that I made a promise to myself, that if I came across somebody that I could help,
that wanted the help and I knew would put in the effort. If they didn't have the money, I knew there was still a way I could help them. It may not be through individual one-on-one, but the idea that, again, sometimes we have to help those who need it, even if they can't afford to pay for it. And we have to remember those stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a whole group of people that would probably love to be in a different place and don't even know that there is a different place to go to.
Absolutely. So, Sylvia, you've been a woman in business and have had great success and great growth. As you look at other women in business, what would you say is the challenge that you see most women in business facing?
I feel like a lot of women in business, or in general, just don't own their power. I mean, they simply give their power away in so many different ways. And I think that when they get crystal clear about the value that they have and who they are and what they're giving to their home or their life or their business, when they own that power, they will identify differently with the things that show up in their lives.
Yeah. So what would you say you're most proud of?
Oh, gosh. I'm most proud of blending a family. I'm most proud of creating relationships with people that wouldn't typically create relationships with, like, for example, the mother of my beautiful children who are my stepchildren. I'm most proud of the businesses that my husband and I have created and being entrepreneurs, and my book and the difference in the vision I have for that. That's definitely my soul work for sure.
I love it. So what's next for Sylvia when you're looking sort of into the future? What is the next thing that you want to work on and accomplish?
I'm actually working on a curriculum that follows my book that I want to put in social systems. So, there are institutions that provide support for people who are on like welfare and different things like that, but they're not systems that get people out of a victim mentality, and they don't move them away from the place that they're already in. And so my work is really based on wanting to create a system and for the institutions like that will really get people into a different mindset and really doing the inner work that it takes to move beyond circumstances that they might have been born into and want to not live that way anymore.
Yeah. Well, Sylvia, you are just, such a beacon of light and love, and, you always are there to encourage people and to sometimes help them get out of their own way. And again, I just appreciate and love your strength and the beauty that you bring, and just appreciate you being a mentor and a friend to me over the years. And I know that you're going to be able to help so many other women on their paths. And I really just wanted to thank you. And I also wanted to ask, some of our viewers might want to connect with you and learn more about you and your story. How can people connect with you?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you again for having me. I really appreciate you asking me to have this conversation. If someone wanted to get a hold of me, they could go to myagreementswithme.com and see the book and the information there, or serenitiesway.com also has all of my information as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.